We are going to be discussing chapter 10, the discussion question. My name is Mariah Neal.
Trent Stryker.
Justin Fickle.
Mason Verbka.
Dan Krychek.
Okay, so this discussion question reads, examine a teaching contract and determine the specific reasons for dismissal as stated in the teaching contract. Discuss each cause for dismissal and give an example of each. Also, contrast and compare terminating a teacher based upon using a district's reduction in force policy and one of the reasons for dismissal as stated in the teaching contract. So I think we kind of touched on quite a bit of this within our chapter kind of reflection or overview. I went ahead and found and printed my contract. So I work at Lexington Public Schools, and I found my contract. And the first thing that I noticed was that, gosh, what webinar was it? Maybe it was the attorney one, but when they were talking about how most contracts have like first, second, third, fourth,
Yeah.
That's exactly like my contract. So that was the very first thing that I figured. And then, so when reading this, I'm looking at the fourth. So the first, second, third, fourth. The fourth one says that a majority of the board members may cancel or amend this contract during its term members for any of the following reasons: cancellation, termination, revocation, or suspension of a teacher's certificate by the State Board of Education. There's quite a lot more within that, but I wanted to touch on suspension of teacher certificate. So that got me thinking about my certificate, and I got kind of panicked. I still have time, but I think that's really important too, is just to be mindful of your credentials and make sure that you're staying up to date on them, because that can definitely determine a lot.
Yeah, I think a lot of districts give, they keep track of that and give you updates. At least I think bigger districts too, they have, personnel hired in the district office to do that. I know we do. But we're getting up to be a bigger district though, so.
Yeah, I know in OPS, we have a person down at TAC that sends out emails saying like, hey, you have 3 months or 3 months that you need to renew your teaching license. And I kind of freaked out last week. I saw an old email from 2021, and I kind of freaked out and had a panic moment too. Where I thought I needed to renew it, and we go back on like the 8th.
Also talking about that, when it talks about cancellation and termination, I don't know about you guys, but listening to the webinars and talking and listening to Dr. C, you talk about kind of the difference of cancellation and termination, and I honestly didn't know the difference. I just thought it was kind of one all in the same. So it's enlightening to know that. And then in the school attorney webinar, the KSB, she said, so she gave some sort of like,
yeah, way to remember that. I do.
It's at the end of the term or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They finish out the school year because it's the end of the term.
Yeah.
Cancellation would be immediately.
Yeah. I don't know. It was entertaining. So that's something too that was interesting.
As I look, I printed one off too, and I would imagine that most of these contracts have, and they said that in the attorney interview, that most do have similar language. And like that one, the certificate, like to me, those are kind of no-brainers for termination. And there's some other obvious ones too, damage to instruction or intentional damage to properties on ours, participation in fraud, engaging in unlawful acts, which we mentioned in the chapter. Then the big one in ours, which has a lot of, subcategories, which was also mentioned in our chapter, was just cause, because that has a lot of things that fall under that. That's where your incompetency comes in. Your neglect of duty, which we all talked about in the chapter, unprofessional conduct, at least in ours, that's where that all that stuff falls. Insubordinations in there, immoralities listed in ours. And then Another one that wasn't necessarily mentioned in the chapter was physical or mental incapacity was in ours also. That was-
Yep,
Right.
that's
I feel like that's a big one now with a lot of people and like the stress of teaching. There's some people who just can't do it anymore.
yeah. No, I agree.
I don't know. I don't know. This isn't the point of the discussion. I don't know. I kind of question that one. I mean, I don't, but I do. We'll just leave it at that. I don't
And
know.
who gets to decide whether you're mentally capable or not?
Correct.
Yeah,
That's another thing. Yeah.
I don't know. Like, and maybe that's just me being stubborn. I don't know. I'm just like, I don't know. That's not the discussion, so we'll just move on. But
In my mind, is that often comes. I know people who have gone, or I know of people who have gone to their administrator and said, "I can't mentally. I'm not capable of this." So then they were able to get out of their contract.
yeah,
Like the reverse way, instead of doing it like the administration or the school board is trying to get rid of you, you're trying to get out of your contract because you can't do it.
yeah,
Yeah, that would smell like a lawsuit if the administrator came to you and said, yeah, you're not mentally capable of being a teacher anymore here.
I know. That's exactly what I didn't think of it the way Mason thought of it. I thought of exactly what Dan, and I was like, ooh, that's kind of, I don't know. So
Yeah, there'd have to be you want to talk about, I mean, a lot of documentation, a lot of evidence to support a claim. Like that's a pretty bold claim. So
yeah.
especially on the mental side of that, I think.
I don't know about any of your guys's contracts, but in Lexington's, there's some there's insubordination and immorality. So those are what we talked about within the
Yeah.
chapter overview. And then there's some pretty, I mean, we talk about kind of no-brainer stuff, but it's again good to have a reminder, and it's good to have something written in paper, because in mine there's the use or possession of illegal drugs, being under the influence of illegal drugs, any arrest, criminal charge, or criminal conviction, or the failure to report. So I think someone mentioned
Yeah, me. Yeah, we have a
failing
10-day
to report.
appeal. Yeah.
So that's something to make a note of too, that like, okay, if something happens and if I do get arrested or something, that I need to do my due diligence and confess and let my district know that hey, this happened.
And then in our OEA one with OPS, one that just kind of caught my eye a little bit was loss of seniority. So if you're on like a leave of absence and you fail to, it says if you fail to be recalled from the layoff within 24 months, a termination of employment could just happen. So that was kind of interesting to me, because I really don't fully understand that. So I'm going to have to talk to some people to understand what that's talking about. But it was kind of hidden in our contract a little bit.
Yeah, that is interesting. They talked in the chapter about if that happens, your seniority, like say you did, like if it was an RIF, which it kind of leads into our next part of this question, right? The reduction in force. Like let's say it was a monetary thing, it was a financial issue, and you got terminated for that reason, and then 2 years later, things are better financially and you're back. It did mention that typically you don't get those 2 years, you don't get that added to your experience typically, or a year or whatever it would be. You're not going to advance in seniority, you're going to pick up usually where you left off. So I guess I don't know if that means you don't get that in your district, or if they're trying to eliminate that or what. But
So from what I'm trying to because I mean, this is new for me. So from what I'm understanding, you read is that if that happens, they kind of start at that ground where they left off.
Well, yeah, where they were at before the termination, right? So if you're your fifth year and then the 6th year, you're going into your 6th, and they had to, terminate because of financial, like a reduction in force situation. And then a year later, you could come back in at that fifth year, right? Or you're going into your sixth year, as far as like pay scale and stuff like that. I don't know if that's law. It just said that's pretty common practice, I think, in most school boards.
Yeah, I'm looking at my contract right here and I can't find anything. And to be quite honest, after taking this class and being in these classes, I'm like, why didn't I read this more better
Yeah.
when I got hired? Because I'll be honest, I really didn't. But I'm not reading anything or seeing anything really where it talks about reduction in force. So I don't know. And you guys may be able to like have more of an opinion or what fact on this, but how, besides this class, besides reading the textbooks, have you guys ever gotten any information regarding reduction in force? Or
I haven't personally. My aunt teaches in Long Beach, and probably like 7 or 8 years ago, and she's taught for 20 some years, and they were giving out, at the time they were just giving pink slips saying, hey, cuts are coming, you get a slip, it might be you. And luckily she never got cut, but a lot of teachers did. And it was this exact situation. It was, these terminations weren't, and that's kind of the comparing contrasting part, the reduction in force terminations. It's not, nothing about it is, about your performance. It's all about, we can't afford to have you, or there's not enough students, or it's financial. So it's and then the due process that goes with that, I read also it's a little less strict because it's not based on performance.
Yeah, when they cut the staff at our school, it was because I think we had 4 English teachers and they just didn't have the need for it anymore, because we had a huge influx of students at one time and then that went away. So it was, the English classes had like 6, 7 kids in them. And it was like we were just overstaffed. So that's how, but then one retired, so they got